y'all, welcome back to my channel and into another video. Now this is going to be something that's kind of new on my channel. I was trying to think of something that I could do that us ladies and men could talk about, real topics, real things that are happening, that are going on in our lives, things that we're dealing with. And so I thought that the first video that I could put out there that might actually help somebody would be dealing with the loss of my dad. This video, I've been trying to record this video 3 or 4 different times, and I have deleted them all, tried to restart. And so today I am just gonna sit down and have a conversation with you, let you guys hear my story and what my process of dealing with this traumatic event that happened in my life, how my story and how it took place and how I'm still dealing with it. And yeah, maybe it'll help somebody out there. I want to try to make some videos that are conversation starters, letting my people know that, hey, yes, I'm a YouTuber, but I also am just like you. I deal with things on personal levels that maybe you guys don't see, because usually, you know, I get on here and I do all this mom stuff, budget videos, Dollar Tree hauls, you know, school box, lunch box videos, and things like that nature, just like mom tricks and tips. But the simple truth of the matter is that we all deal with different types of things internally and personally, dealing with the loss of a parent or a child or a grandparent, dealing with loss in general, and see if we can start a conversation. Maybe it'll help somebody deal with their loss a little bit better. Who knows? But I felt like I needed to make this video. I've been trying to make this video for months. And I just decided that no matter what comes out of my mouth, this time I'm going to upload it and just hopefully it helps somebody. It's going to be a real conversation. Hopefully I don't break down in this video. I'm not a big fan of crying in front of people, so hopefully I can make it through this video without crying. And yeah, we're just gonna go ahead and get started. If you are new here, welcome to my channel. I hope that if you have happened upon this video that you might take some kind of advice or some guidance, or you know, maybe just the fact that you're not the only one out there dealing with this type of issue. And I hope that it helps you know that there's other people out there that are dealing with this, that feel the same way that you do. And for all of you guys who have been following along with me in my journey, you guys know over the past 2 years, well, really the past year and a half or so, that we've been dealing with my dad's health and ultimately his passing. So if you are wanting to know the story, here it is, and we're gonna go ahead and jump right in. So if you see me looking down, I made notes of things that I kind of want to hit on and talk about. I have no idea how long this video is going to be, so just bear with me as I just tell you our story. So December of 2017, my dad called me at 3 o'clock in the morning and he told me that he was having a heart attack. And the first time he called, it was 3 o'clock in the morning. I didn't answer my phone. And then he called me right back and I answered the phone and he said, "Sue, I'm having a heart attack." And at this point he had already called the paramedics and he was being loaded up into an ambulance to be taken to a hospital. I thought that it was just gonna be, you know, a mild heart attack. Because up until this point, my dad, he had diabetes, but he had no real other like heart issues or concerns to my knowledge. And me being in the medical field, whenever I tell you that he probably just didn't give me all the information as far as his health is concerned. That's probably an accurate situation, because if he would have told me what the problems were, then I would have been more proactive in making sure he was taking better care of himself. But he's my dad, so dads don't want their kids to worry about them, you know, that they try to deal with it by themselves. And my dad is very much a loner. He's a very much people person, but he likes his own space. He likes to be by himself. He, you know, after my parents got divorced when I was 8 years old, he never remarried. He's always lived by himself. He's always been really independent. So that's the background of my dad. So whenever he called me, now granted, he lives about 2 hours away from me at this point, and he calls me and he says, I'm having a heart attack, plain as can be. And just like that, Sue, I'm having a heart attack. I'm going to the hospital. They're taking me to this hospital. And so I said, okay, Dad, I'll be there just as soon as I can. And by the time he got to the hospital, they immediately took him down to the cardiac cath lab, and they started running tests on him, and he had complete blockage in what we call the widowmaker part of the heart, which is right in the center of the heart. And so they already knew by the time they got done with that test that my dad would end up having bypass surgery. So by the time I got there, they were getting ready to take him back. And they had already actually taken my dad back seconds before I walked into the hospital, because at this point it was an emergency open heart surgery. Now, granted, I'm a very calm and collected kind of person. I also deal with my feelings and what's going on with me internally. I don't like to talk about things. I process and deal with my anxiety, my stress, my personal emotions, all internally, and that works for me. So the whole time that we're driving over there, my husband is like trying to console me, and you know, he probably figured, well, why isn't she crying? Why isn't she, you know, upset? And it's not that I wasn't upset, it's just that I was dealing and processing with this problem internally, okay? So I got to the hospital and they had taken him back for open heart surgery. I spoke to my dad on the phone. He called me right before they took him back, and I told my dad that I was there, that I was walking into the hospital, and that I didn't physically see him before he went back, but that I was there. You know, we said, I love you, and I told him that I would see him in a couple hours. Well, he went back, and a couple hours turned into about 8.5 hours. He ended up having emergency quadruple bypass surgery. And if you guys don't know, that is a very time-consuming, also it's a very serious surgery. It's one that people don't make it through the surgery. We had a couple of things on our side, one being that he got to the hospital so quickly and went right back into surgery. The second being that, to my knowledge, up until this point, he had no real health issues as far as his heart was concerned, other than he was born with an enlarged heart, and all that is he just has a bigger heart than most people do, and it was left side dominant. So, I mean, we already knew that going into the surgery, but it caused no serious health concerns to what was happening. That wasn't the reason why he was having the heart attack. So he ended up, what they thought was going to be a double bypass ended up to be a quadruple bypass. So the doctor comes out and he says to me, you know, how sick my dad really was, and that he did not know for certain whether or not he would make it through the night. And if he did make it through the night, he didn't know if he would last a week or a month or a year, that his heart was very, very damaged, and he did not know what the outcome would be like. So after that, of course, you know, being in the medical field, for me, seeing him hooked up to all the tubes and the machines and All of that medical stuff was not a big shock to me because being in the medical field, I already knew all that. So, but to my husband, it was quite a bit of a shock to see, he's on a pump that's making sure his heart does what it's supposed to. Basically, for the next week or so, he was kept unconscious and under anesthesia to keep him comfortable, to see if what the doctors had done during surgery was going to take. He ended up ultimately spending a month in ICU, and he then spent about 6 to 8 weeks in cardiac rehab facility after that. So during this time, this all happened at Christmas, actually, right before Christmas on December 16th of 2017. So throughout that time, it was March whenever he got to go home. And of course, at this point in time, he lived 2 hours away from me. I tried to convince him to come home with me, to stay with me throughout this time. And he did come home to my house for about 2 weeks after he got out of cardiac rehab, just to give himself his own peace of mind on whether or not he could be by himself or not. So after that 2-week time frame, he was in pretty good shape, I would say. I mean, he wasn't 100% back to normal, but he was to the point where he could move around, and he had home health workers coming in to do his cleaning and his laundry and his shopping and stuff. So he felt like he could be at home by himself, so he went back home. And he stayed at home for the remainder of his time. He got to the point where he was able to function about his day. He went out and drove himself and went and took care of everything he needed to do, just like any normal person would do. And then I would say about the following October to November, I felt like there was a change in his health. He started not becoming prepared, or he started to not be his normal self, I would say. He started in his mind to mentally prepare himself for his death, meaning he told me, what to do after he passed on. He went and put things in my name and, addressed his will situation. And by the time Christmas rolled around, he was definitely declining. I mean, he was declining. He got better when he went home, and then the longer he was at home, he started to decline, and his heart started to get weaker, and he started filling up with fluid. And I knew, I knew what the outcome would ultimately be whenever he had his heart attack. I knew then that this would kill him, and that I didn't know if I had 2 months. I didn't know if I had a year. I didn't know if I had 6 months. All I knew is that I knew that if anything else happened to his heart, if he suffered another heart attack or anything like that, that it would ultimately kill him, because they fixed his heart in such a manner that they did all that they could do for his heart. So ultimately, we were preparing. By around Thanksgiving, it set into me that he was ultimately actively probably dying. We spent Thanksgiving with him. We went over there, we took Thanksgiving dinner to him, and when we left that day, I just knew. He hugged me in a way that is undescribable to somebody who doesn't know what's going on. I'll give you an example. The last time I seen my grandmother before she died, she hugged me in this exact same way. And she held on a little bit longer and a little bit tighter, and there was just this non-verbal transfer between the two of us that I knew. Well, at the time when my grandmother died, I didn't know what this was. I just knew that she hugged me a little bit longer, to the point where I walked away in tears whenever this happened. I didn't know what it meant. I just know it meant something. And then she died a couple months later. And again, her health had been declining, and I knew that that was the last time that I was going to see her. When she died, I knew then that what that transfer of feeling was to me was her telling me that this was the last time that I would see her. And she wanted to hug me a little bit tighter and for a little bit longer. And so whenever I left my dad's that day on Thanksgiving, he did the same thing to me, and I knew when I walked away what that meant, okay? So we started planning our Christmas festivities, if you will, and he was gonna come home. He was gonna stay from about the 3rd week in December all the way until the end of January. He was gonna stay with me just to, he knew it was coming, you know, he knew that his life was ending, and he wanted to spend as much time with my kids as he could. And with me, I'm sure. But he had all these plans. He wanted to do all these baking, you know, brownies and cookies and all these special treats that his mom used to do whenever he was a kid. So, you know, we had this huge plan of him coming home, and he ended up dying the week before that took place. And I knew the last couple conversations we were getting closer, because he would say, you know, I'd be like, what do you want for Christmas? And he'd say, you know, at the end, you just want to be loved. And so it was always in my mind, preparing me since Thanksgiving, that I knew that he wouldn't be around much longer, which is weird to say. I think that God just kind of laid it upon my heart to have been preparing me for the last year of his life. He ended up dying almost a year to the day of his massive heart attack. And I think that it was God's way of preparing me within that year of him ultimately passing. Nothing ever prepares you for when the time comes. You know, nobody's thinking at 38 years old that your dad is dying and that he won't be around much longer, or your mother or your grandparent or whatever. You just assume, you know, that I was 38 years old, my dad was 66 whenever he had his massive heart attack, and he was 67 when he died. And most people these days live a little bit longer than that. You know, 67 is considered fairly young to die these days. So you're just not prepared for it. No matter what you do, no matter how mentally prepared you try to get, nothing prepares you. And so I was in a little bit of a shock. I mean, and again, I deal with my emotions eternally and in my own brain and in my own body. And the worst part for me was telling my children and watching their responses of how they dealt with that. And it's harder for children. I wouldn't say it's harder for children. I say that it would be different for children. So in that moment when I had to tell my kids that, you know, their grandpa had passed away, that I would deal with this situation in a different way, because one day I'm gonna pass away, and I want my children to be, whether that's in 20 years, 50 years, tomorrow, I wanted my children to be able to understand that death was a big part of life, and we need to deal with it. It's okay, we need to deal with it. And so I didn't want to break down. I didn't want to show any sort of weakness. I just really wanted my kids to know that we were going to celebrate Grandpa's life, and that's the way that we're going to do it. You know what I mean? So all of the like psychologists, now I took psychology whenever I was in high school, and sociology and all that stuff. And they always say that there is the 5 stages of grief, the grief process, and denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, I think, are the 5. I did not have denial. I think everybody deals with grief in a different way. I didn't have denial. I didn't have anger. I didn't do this bargaining situation. I did get depressed. I got so depressed to the point where I didn't want to get out of my bed, but I forced myself to get up every single day because I didn't want my children to see me in a manner in which they felt like they had to A, take care of me, or B, I didn't want them to not know that it was okay for people to die. Like, I needed my kids to know that it was okay, that this is part of life, and that we will remember them and we'll deal with that and celebrate their life and what they meant to us without dealing with the dark side of that. So the only, out of those 5 stages, really, the only one that I personally dealt with was depression. And if you knew me on a personal level, which I hope by this point some of you guys really understand what type of person that I am, I have never dealt with depression before until this point in my life. And I was really close with my dad. You guys don't understand that, how close that I really was with my dad, and especially the last year of his life, I got extremely, even more closer, we had such a strong relationship, more so in the last year of his life, me understanding him really understanding me, him telling me all of the stories of his past and his childhood that he had never shared with me before. He wanted to give me that so that I can take that and share it with my kids. So I got really depressed. There's a fly over here on the wall. I got really depressed to the point where I needed help. And I work for a doctor, so I'm not one of these people that A, like to take medication, and B, I don't like asking for help. It's not within me to do that. I try to deal with things on my own. But it got to the point where I was struggling to get out of bed. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to lay in bed. And I knew that I needed help, and I knew I needed to get that help before my kids started to realize what was going on with me personally. So I reached out to my doctor. He put me on an antidepressant, which I took for about 4 months. I just needed enough help to get me through the darkest part of dealing with the loss of a parent, or the loss of anybody for that matter. So I hope that from this you guys take a few things away from it. Taking your time to deal with grief is different for everybody. Some people can deal with it in a month, some people can deal with it in 6 months. Take your time and grieve the amount of time that you need mentally. For me, I'm still dealing with the grief process, but the hardest part is over. The hardest part, the sadness, is over for me. I know that my dad is in heaven just chilling with Jesus, and that's where he wanted to be. He knew that that's where he was going, and he was strong in his conviction with that. And I just know that he's up there painting Bob Ross canvases right next to Jesus. I just know that's what he's doing, and he's looking down on me, watching me, helping me, guiding me. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think of my dad or say to myself, what would my dad do? What would my dad say? What is the advice that my dad would give me? And I take that very personally and into heart, and I always just listen. He's all around us all the time. The second thing that I would say to do is to celebrate the life. You know, yes, it's sad when they're gone, and it's sad that they're no longer with you, but you've got to see the positive side of that, and that is celebrate who they were. You know, share with people who they were, share with your children who they were, you know, celebrate them, celebrate their life. If you guys follow along here on this channel, you guys know that we spent 2 weeks in Illinois. We recently, during the last year, me and my dad were planning this camping trip / cabin trip for a few months. in the springtime of last year. And so of course, obviously he passed away before we could do that trip. But our family, in order to celebrate his life, we took that trip. We did all of the things that Grandpa wanted to do and, you know, my dad wanted to do. And we celebrated his life for 2 straight weeks, just healing and dealing and grieving for him and celebrating his life. And it was such an amazing trip, and it really healed my heart quite a bit. So that would be my second thing, is to just celebrate their life, no matter who it is. Be blessed for the amount of time that you got to spend with them, and just celebrate them. If you need my next tip is to talk to somebody. If you are one of those people that need to speak to somebody, reach out and speak to them, whether it's a friend, an aunt, an uncle, another parent, a doctor. Do what you need to do. Some people need to get things off of their chest. I'm not that type of person. Like I said, I really internalize a lot of my feelings, and I cope. My coping mechanism is within my own mind. So for me, reaching out and talking to somebody was not something that I did. But for the majority of people, talk to somebody, reach out, ask for help. Whether you need to speak to a doctor and ask them for some medication, or go see a counselor, or go to a support group, get it off of your chest if you feel like you need to do that. The fourth thing is just remember them every single day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't remember or think of my dad in some way. And my kids may not do that every single day, but it is very often and very frequent that my kids come to me and say, oh, you remember this about Grandpa, or do you remember when we did this with Grandpa? My kids' memories with our day-to-day life includes my dad in it. And so, you know, we'll be making something, or one of the other kids would say something, and it's something my dad used to say. So even though they are young, okay, and obviously they don't have the memories that I have, they still have their own memories, and it's brought forth in them all the time, very frequently. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't think about him on a daily basis. So that is the next tip. One more is, everybody deals with grief differently. You know, I deal with it internally. Other people, you know, need to talk to somebody. Other people need to go off and be left alone for a month or 2 at a time. Everybody deals with grief differently. My hope for people is that even though they're dealing with grief, they don't turn to the wrong things, such as alcohol or drugs or things like that. That is not going to help you deal with grief. That is going to put a band-aid on it and make you forget about what's going on. You know what I'm saying? So you want to make sure that you're not trying to slap a band-aid on it and drink your worries away, because that's not going to help you. That's not going to do anything for you in the long run, other than put a band-aid on it. Eventually you're going to have to deal with your emotions and the grief, and if that is 6 months after you stop drinking, then that's when you're going to deal with it. You cannot mentally deal with something when you're under the use of drugs or alcohol. You just cannot. There's always going to be, for me, there is a little bit of regret. I've tried and tried and tried to get my dad to come and live with me. And my dad just straight up told me one time that I'm not coming to live with you because I don't want my grandchildren to watch me die. And I know I had to deal with him being alone when he died. He was alone in his house when he died. And for me, that's the worst part of it, is that he was by himself. But it was his choice to do that. You know, he suffered another heart attack, and he died in his house by himself. And that's something that I carry, that regret of not being able to make my dad come and live with me. But at the same time, I didn't want him to do something that he didn't want to do because he's my dad. I'm not his parent, he's my parent. And that's exactly how he put it to me. I'm not gonna let my grandchildren watch me die. And that's how that went. So you will have regrets. Make sure that you're telling your loved ones every day, okay, that you love them. I talked to my dad every single day for an entire year before he died. Every day. Sometimes I talked to him 2 or 3 times a day. So I can't say that our communication was lax or that I regret not spending more time with him or things like that, because that regret's not there for me. I talked to my dad every single day from the time he had his heart attack until he died, every day. I talked to my dad the morning that he died. I talked to my dad. I talked to my dad that morning, and he died sometime that afternoon to evening time. And the last things that he said to me, he never let me hang up the phone without saying, I love you. And he would always say, I may not see you tomorrow, but I love you, and you just need to know that. And so every day, that's how we ended our conversation. And I would always say, you're gonna live until you're 100, you know. But, you know, I always said I loved you back, and we left it every single time with that, every day for a year. So just make sure you're telling your loved ones that you love them, how much you mean to them, because you never know when the last time it is that you're gonna talk to somebody or see somebody. So if they're important to you, take that time and make sure that they know that you love them, and don't ever walk away from somebody not saying that. And then the last thing that my advice for you is to confront your emotions, okay? I confront my emotions internally, and with the help of medication. I'm no longer taking that medication. I only took it for about 4 months until I dealt with my emotions. Sometimes you need help, and sometimes you need medication to help you through that, to help you cope, and to help you deal with what it is emotionally that you're going through. So my advice is to confront that. If you need help with a medication or seeing a counselor, then please do that. Don't try to do it by yourself if you know that you've tried to do it by yourself and it's not working, because that's what I did. I tried for the first 2 months to cope with my emotions, to confront my emotions, to deal with them internally, and I was doing all of that stuff. I just got depressed because of it. So I reached out and I asked for help, and I work for an excellent doctor who was willing to give me a medication that he knew that I can take short term and then could just quit it when I felt like I was ready to quit it, because I'm one that don't take medication. I don't like medicine. I don't want to take it. So he helped me with that, and I'm grateful for that. So I'm asking you that if you're dealing with a loss and you're struggling, go see a doctor and have them help you with some medication if that's what you need to do. If you can confront your emotions and without medication, then that's really good, great. Deal with it, and you know, just deal with it. So that is basically all that I have for you. Other than I just wanted to say that I hope that this helped somebody in some way. I felt compelled to share my story with you. My dad was a lot of things. He was by no means perfect, but he was perfect for me. And I will always be my father's daughter, and I loved him very much, and I still love him, and I miss him every single day. And I hope that he continues to watch out for us and my little family, because I know he's guiding us into directions. There's things that I'm doing today that I would never have imagined me doing 6 or 7 months ago. And I know that it's his guidance that's pushing me into a direction that I am now. So with that being said, I hope you guys can take away something from this video. If you have any stories to share, please share them in the comment box below. If you have a personal message that you would like to share, my email address is also in the description box. You can find it there. I do have an Instagram account and it's also in the description box if you want to. If you wouldn't mind, before you left, if you're a newbie here, please hit that subscribe button. We'd love to have you a part of our family. And I think that I will try to do more of these little real conversations and talks and how to deal with certain situations. So if you have something that you're dealing with and you would like to have a discussion about it, leave me what you would like for me to talk about in the description box below, and I'll be more than happy to oblige you and bring you a video of some real conversations. All right, guys, that does it for this video. I hope you guys have a fantastic weekend, and I will see you guys in the next one. Bye.